Hello, 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 Aries. I'm Poetic Heretic, and this is your September 2020 astrology forecast, where we take a look at the most significant astrological developments of the month and interpret them for your sign. So, we're doing things a little bit differently this month. We are, instead of my reading a written report, I am just going to go over the astrological developments with you, the various charts in real time. So this should be interesting. As always, predictive astrology work like this will be most accurate for your rising sign. So I recommend using videos like this for your rising sign first and foremost. And then after that, if you would like to look at your sun and moon sign, that can also be valuable as well. So just so you know, Aries, you are the very first ones, as usual, the very first ones that I do a reading for when I do these kinds of readings, since you are first in zodiacal order. So let's see how this goes, my going over the charts with you in real time. All right, so we begin the month here with, well, kind of an announcement. Let me just select it here. So you may notice on screen that the first chart we're looking at for Mars square Saturn is September 29th, the very end of the month. And the reason that we're looking at that is because the entire month of September has to be understood in this context first if you are to properly understand what is actually happening throughout September. Because if you recall from the forecast last month, I talked about how Mars is going through this extended stay in Aries due to the retrograde. And a big component of that is the fact that Mars is square to Saturn for so much of that time. And without getting too detailed, Mars is going to primarily be square to Saturn this month, September. And what we have on screen is really just the time that square perfects. However, here's the thing. Mars goes retrograde in the middle of September, and as a result of that, it is holding that position, that 25 or so degrees of Aries, for almost the entire month, for virtually the entire month of September, and thus it is held in this very tight square with Saturn. And so this is kind of this energy going on in the background throughout the month, but it's very tense. It's very frustrating. It's affecting everyone of every sign. And I would say what you need to know first and foremost about September is that this energy is here and it's not going away anytime soon. It's here. It's very frustrating. It's not easy energy to work with because Mars in Aries wants to push forward, wants to do things very immediately, wants to do things now. And Saturn up in Capricorn is saying, no, you have to stop, you have to slow down, or there's this obstacle that you have to overcome. There's this authority figure that you have to deal with, or whatever it happens to be. So the key word here is really frustration. And again, this is affecting everyone of every sign. So that's going on in the background, and it's going to last into October as well, but then, things start moving a little bit, and of course we can cover that for next month. But just know that basically this is happening constantly throughout this month of September, and this doesn't normally happen. Ask any astrologer right now, like they will tell you this is highly unusual that Mars would station retrograde in a square with Saturn, and that it would last for an entire month like this. So yeah, some intense times here. Now, as for what it means for you, Aries, what is this energy going on in the background? Well, something that is happening in the area of you personally and or your career or public image is creating a lot of frustration. And it's a stressful event that will eventually push you into new areas of activity, though you likely won't see them this month. But it involves focused action or motivation or desire And it also likely involves limitation or responsibility or the facing of a difficult reality. And this stressful event that is sort of happening in the background, but is like a constant frustration this month, I would say. Like I said, it's not going to have its outcome anytime soon, but when it does, the areas of life that it will most likely end up affecting for you are you personally, and or your career or public image, and or your friends or any social group to which you belong. And so that is the eventual outcome of this. But know also that, so with Mars having this extended stay in your first house, we talked about this last month, but I want to emphasize it again this month because it's extremely important this month. You are getting a sort of intensive review slash lesson slash need for presence, need for spending more time with that area of your life, the first house. Now, again, for you, that's yourself. The first house is the house of self. So of you personally, of your character, who you are. In some cases, it can also talk about things relating to your physical body or your appearance, stuff like that. But basically, it's you as opposed to everything and everyone else in your life. So this is quite the review of you personally. And I want also to remind people that if you're feeling a lot of frustration throughout the month of September, know that this is normal. Do not panic. We are in some rather difficult circumstances right now, astrologically. And if you just give it a month or two, but really I have to say give it about 6 months because that's how long it's going to take for this whole thing to pass us by. Or well, now that it's September, I guess that would be more like 5 months. Basically, about February of 2021 is when we can expect this to essentially be done and over with. But there may be a bit of a lull in it as we get more into November, but it's also not really going away. So yeah, just know if you're feeling a lot of frustration right now, it's normal. It's not a sign that anything is wrong. It's energy that is best worked with and accepted as such. So again, as we go through the rest of the month of September here, just keep in mind that that is happening in the background throughout this entire month. All right, so our first main event here in the month of September is on September 2nd, where we have the full moon at 1:22 a.m. Eastern Time. And by the way, all times here are in Eastern Time, with the location set for New York, as you can see on screen. So adjust all times to your time zone accordingly. And of course, we are using a 0 Aries chart so that these charts make sense for anyone at any point on the globe. So the full moon is in Pisces, and it is on September 2nd. And so this is where things come to a head. So for you, Aries, you can expect things to come to a head in your 12th house. And that is the area of how you spend time alone or your enemies. So expect things to come to a head in that area. Now, notice, of course, not only is it a full moon in Pisces, but there's even a rather wide conjunction, about 9.5 degrees, it looks like, to Neptune, which is the ruler, the modern ruler of Pisces. And so I would say this is an especially dreamy full moon. Like, it's enough that it's in Pisces to begin with, which gives us a break from the rather earthy, focused Virgo energy that we get this time of year with the sun going through Virgo. But it's made even more dreamy by the fact that we have Neptune involved. So right around September 2nd, expect dreams, imagination, illusions, creativity, all things that are mysterious and maybe even supernatural to become much more of a theme for at least a good couple of days. Also notice that this full moon is in a very close, very tight sextile to Uranus and Taurus. And so there's also this element of unpredictability with this full moon, this element of an energy of excitement, of innovation, of something new, of something groundbreaking. Things are happening with this full moon that aren't just dreamy, they're also electric. They are also exciting and new and unique and different. So we have that factor. Let's see, is there anything else I want to mention with this before we move on? Nope, I would say that's it. The only other thing that could really be mentioned is again, remember, this is in your 12th house of how you spend time alone or isolation or hidden enemies, illnesses sometimes, that sort of thing. All right, now, later that same day, September 2nd at 8:19 a.m. Eastern Time, we have Venus making an opposition to Saturn. And so these are, for all intents and purposes, happening pretty much at the same time. And this creates an interesting contrast between that full moon in Pisces energy, because Venus opposite Saturn has a much more serious, somber, reality-based vibe to it. And so that is, I don't know, that's going to be a weird sort of mixture of energies, very dreamy on one hand with the full moon in Pisces, and then very serious and intense, perhaps, with the Venus opposition to Saturn. So for you, Aries, this is happening in your 4th and 10th house axis. So this is essentially Venus opposite Saturn, something occurring in your public and or private life that involves how you relate to others and or accepting responsibility or facing a difficult reality or authority figures or limitation that is manifesting as someone or something challenging you in that area. And as this is happening, this oppositions also tend to involve a choice, so you may be called on to make a choice of some kind at this time. The areas of life that it will end up affecting for you are your self-image and or money life, your major relationships, your career public image, and or your friends or social groups. So there you have it. And by the way, if you can't tell, I'm doing this all in my head this month because without a written report, an already existing written report, I must do it all in my head. So, but I don't mind. Now, next on September 11th at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Time, we have the Sun opposite Neptune. So this is occurring in your 6th and 12th house, or on your 6th and 12th house axis. So Sun opposite Neptune, this is like the life force of the sun, one's sense of self, one's energy, one's vitality, up against Neptune, which is dreams, imagination, illusion. So with this being another opposition, this is again someone or something challenging you in the area of either your work, health schedule, day-to-day activities, and or your how you spend time alone or your enemies. And again, it's involving your sense of self or spirituality, dreams, illusion, or even both. So that's a very interesting tension that we have between the Sun in Virgo, which is very grounded and practical, and Neptune in Pisces, which is very dreamy and imaginative. So that sort of pull between reality and fantasy we have there. Now, for you, Aries, this aspect will most likely end up affecting your creative self-expression and or how you spend time alone or your enemies. But there's another element to this that makes it even more interesting, and that is, if you notice on screen here, the sun, as it is opposite Neptune, is also trine Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn in Capricorn. And so there's also this breakthrough energy happening at this time. Trines are breakthroughs, trines are removal of resistance. And that is, well, with Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, that is involving anything or everything from your worldview or expansion of your worldview to deep emotional experiences and inner transformation to, again, with Saturn, the accepting of limitation, reality, authority figures, or obstacles of various kinds. But again, this would be a breakthrough in that area. And so some very interesting energy there at 4:20 p.m., lighting up the imaginative realms on that Friday, September 11th. All right. Next, we have on September 17th at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, the new moon in Virgo. So this is, again, something that's happening in your 6th house of your work, health schedule, day-to-day activities. And the new moon is where we begin a new cycle. It sets the tone for the next month to come. And so this is a very practical new moon, a very grounded new moon in the sign of Virgo. Again, with it occurring in your 6th house, expect these next coming weeks to have a flavor of your day-to-day activities, your work, health schedule, these sorts of things. Now, notice also what makes this even more of a very grounded and earthy new moon is the trine to Saturn in particular. I guess you could say it's also trine somewhat to Jupiter and Pluto, but it's especially very closely trine Saturn. And so again, there's this harmonizing with what is real. Saturn is interested in what is real. So a very earthy, practical, new beginning energy that we have on September 17th. So, and remember, trines can facilitate breakthroughs as well. All right. The last aspect we'll be looking at this month is Mercury opposite Mars on September 24th at 6:47 a.m. Eastern Time. So this is an interesting one. Mercury opposite Mars, I can tell you right now from my experience, especially when we notice how they're both square to Saturn, is an aspect of anger and fighting and arguments, exchange of difficult words. So I would say be especially careful about that at this time. With this being another opposition, this is again someone or something likely challenging you in the area of your major relationships and or you personally, and involving communication or what you write, study, talk, or think about, and or focused action, anger, motivation, desire, and will end up affecting your communication, short distance travel, what is familiar to you, and or your work, health schedule, day-to-day activities, and or you personally, or your partner's money, business, or issues of life and death. So a lot of powerful stuff going on with this Mercury-Mars opposition. And again, when we notice the square to Saturn, well, first of all, we can say very simply that creates certainly a lot of tension and rigidity and conflict with reality that can be very difficult and just exacerbate the situation. But we also notice that this is a configuration that, if my knowledge of medieval astrology serves me correctly, is called, or how do I put this, would be considered a planet accepting the management. The heaviest planet in an aspect accepts the management, and that would be Saturn here. And that very often manifests as an authority figure of some kind, deciding what should happen between two opposing parties. And what makes that so particularly significant in this case is that that authority figure is Saturn, which already represents authority figures to begin with. And so I say that there is a very high probability here that if you find yourself on or around September 24th involved in some kind of conflict with another person, that there is a very Saturnine authority figure who will end up being the arbiter of that situation, or being the judge of that, who decides the outcome or decides who should win or whatever. I mean, this could even be a legal case for many people, I would say. Now, for you in particular, Aries, that Saturn is in your 10th house. And so the authority figure who makes this decision is quite possibly to be found in the area of your career or public image. So perhaps someone that you work with, or that you just know publicly, or again, even authority figures in that area in general, like your boss or whatever. So that is that's a very interesting aspect. And I would say, just on a very basic level also, like, be careful around that time. This is not a time to try to argue if you don't have to. This is not a time to start a fight, even though it may be very tempting for many of us. And that was something I was actually going to mention at the very beginning of the video, come to think of it, about the Mars-Saturn square, is that this would be one of the worst times this month of September, and in the few months to follow as well. This would be one of the worst times to try to fight almost any kind of a battle, unfortunately. And I know that may not be what we want to hear, especially those of us who like to fight battles that are worth fighting, but that's just the reality at this time. Mars is in a very good condition overall to take on Saturn, but Saturn is in an even better condition at this time, having Pluto and Jupiter there as well in this square. And so Saturn, my objective opinion on that, and I think just about any other astrologer would agree with me, Saturn is the clear winner here. And so you don't want to try to take any extra heroic action now. Like, save your energy for fighting and for battle for at least a few months from now, if you can. Like, at least give it, well, ideally more like 6 months, to make sure that we're really out of this first. But try to avoid fighting right now if you can, is the main advice. So that is it, Aries. I hope you enjoyed this. The month of September, it is a rough one. I'm not going to sugarcoat shit for you. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to tell it to you like it is. And that's why I think anyone who comes to my content comes to it, is because they want to hear how it is. They don't want to be just told what they want to hear. So the month of September is not easy. It is not easy, but I think it's much better to be aware that it's not easy, and that there is this great probability for frustration and the potential for arguments and all these things that we've been over, rather than going into it thinking, oh, everything's going to be the same as usual, because it isn't. This is highly, highly unusual. Some of the most stressful aspects that I've ever seen. I mean, keep in mind, we still have that Saturn-Pluto conjunction, even though it's long since perfected. It's still very much activated up there in Capricorn, and it will continue to affect us, I would say, for as long as Saturn remains in Capricorn, which is until halfway through December of this year. So we're living in really wild times, and we are far from out of it yet. In September, it's going to be rough, but at the same time, it is a challenge, as always, worth accepting. So thank you so much, Aries. Feel free to like and subscribe if you're not already, as I'm always making more content like this. And thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great month of September indeed.